Hello everyone, hope you are doing well. This is our first meeting in 2024 and I would like to wish all of you a happy new year. Today we will be talking about the collection of short stories titled Malgudi Days, and this will be our last session on this book. I hope whatever I say will add to your interest in the stories of Malgudi. As you must be knowing, the full name of R.K. Narayan is Rasipuram Krishna Swami Iyer Narayan Swami. Rasipuram is actually the name of the place to which he belonged, and Krishna Swami was the name of his father, Krishna Swami Iyer. That is how his father was known. And his name is Narayan Swami. That is a practice in many South Indian families where they attach the name of their locality, their place, and the name of their father to their own name. Now, R.K. Narayan, and this is interesting, he was the first Brahmin Iyer who used to work for a Madras-based paper called The Justice, which was actually a paper dedicated to the rights of non-Brahmins. And another interesting thing about R.K. Narayan is there are autobiographical elements in two of his novels. The Bachelor of Arts, we have talked about the Bachelor of Arts, and also another novel titled The English Teacher. The Bachelor of Arts is about his student days, and The English Teacher is a beautiful novel, sad but beautiful, which talks about his wife's death in typhoid. So these two novels, they are important if we consider the life story of R.K. Narayan. And you see, another interesting fact about R.K. Narayan is that he had set up his own publishing company in 1942. And that publishing company was set up not because R.K. Narayan wanted to go for self-publication, for the sake of self-publication, but there was a reason. At that time, India was being cut off from England due to the war. And that is why he took up the responsibility of publishing his own works, and the publishing company was known as Indian Thought Publications, and we see that his works are still being published by this publishing house, which is now being run by his granddaughter named Bhuvaneshwari, and she manages this publishing house from Chennai, from her home in Chennai. Now, Bhuvaneshwari, who likes to be called Minnie, she does everything from jacket design to printing, binding, and marketing. And as a result, even today, many R.K. Narayan books are being sold and marketed, published by Indian Thought Publications. If we look at who distributes the publications of Indian Thought Publications, this publishing house, it would be India Book House, which is headquartered in Mumbai. So this publishing house, which was set up by R.K. Narayan, is still functional, And the first book published in this manner was Malgudi Days in 1943. Now, in the last session, Pallavi and I had read out two stories for you. I read out the story titled Hungry Child, and she read out the story titled Lolly Road. And I would like to talk a little bit about both these stories today. Coming to the story called Hungry Child, I want to focus on the names of streets and places that we see in that story. The market road is mentioned, so is the river Sarayu, and also the street where the main character of the story lives, that is Elaman Street. These are some of the places which are mentioned in that story, and I would like to talk about those places. If we look at the map of Malgudi, of course, Malgudi is not an actual place, as has been emphasized time and again. And R.K. Narayan has been asked so many times about Malgudi and its origins, but he has never made it clear, and this he has done deliberately, I'm sure. There are some views circulating, and we don't know whether those views are true or not. That, some views that Malgudi is a blend of two Bengaluru localities, two places in Bengaluru, Maleshwara and Basavanagudi. Basavanagudi. Okay. So Malgudi. But this is not verified. This is just a conjecture. One out of many such efforts to trace the origins of Malgudi, which is ever elusive because, there is an interesting line that R.K. Narayan says about Malgudi when he's asked so many times about where this place is, or which is the actual place upon which this fictional town is modeled. He says, Malgudi is where we all belong and where we wish we lived. So, that a view like that is something which makes us interested in Malgudi even today. So I was talking about specific locales, specific names that we find in the story Hungry Child, and also in the story that Pallavi read out, Lolly Extension. Okay, so I will just talk a little bit about the arrangements of all these locales in the map of what we would call as the map of Malgudi. So there is this river Sarayu, which has an ancientness about it because the river is associated with Sri Ramchandra, and it is mythical. Okay, that Sri Ramchandra was the creator of Sarayu. And on the other end, there is this place called Lolly Extension, which is a kind of westernized setting and where elite people live, government servants or lawyers or doctors or municipality officials, all of the people who have a good standing and they earn well. Uh, they reside in that particular area, Lolly Extension. And then we have Market Road somewhere in between, which is called the lifeline of Malgudi, Market Road, because this is the road where all the lanes and by lanes they merge, all the lanes and by lanes which define life in Malgudi. And it is also interesting that R.K. Narayan is known for his long walks through these lanes and by lanes, and that is how probably he came in contact with so many people. And it is said that he would talk to anyone whom he met, no matter whether he knew that person or not. He would try to have a conversation, and probably that was his way of trying to understand people and their thoughts, dilemmas as they went about their daily affairs. So he would go on long walks, and he would not walk fast. He would walk slowly. And he was usually seen wearing his white shirt and white dhoti, and he would have his umbrella with him. That was how people, noticed him walking on the streets of the place that he calls Malgudi. So he would go on these long walks, and all those streets, all those lanes and by lanes, they come and merge in this area, which is called the Market Road, which is at the heart of Malgudi. And there is a difference in the way people live in these areas. While the settlements near the Sarayu River, those settlements are neat and clean, and the people there, they have a good living, though they are not very well off as compared to people who live in Lolly extension, but they have a good living. But here in Market Road, you would see people who live in dingy houses, and there would be gutters, and the environment would be not so clean. Okay, so that is the kind of environment around Market Road. And it is interesting that when the story, The Hungry Child, it begins, um, Raman, he is coming from Ellerman Street to Market Road, around which this expo has been organized. And he finds the din unbearable. He finds, the noise and the constant, tunes of obscene songs, and the constant commentaries going on. He finds them unbearable, not to his taste. But then he does not want to go back to his own house, because there is another story behind this particular story. And that is why I wanted to bring in the story again. When I was reading that story, if you have listened to it, it must be very difficult for you to decide where your sympathies lie. Do they lie with Raman? Do they lie with the girl named Daisy? Or do they lie with the child, who moves about the expo, very excited to see all those delicacies, and the giant wheel or the horse ride? So why was it really difficult to decide? That is because the writer refrains from making moral judgments. And that is something striking about the way R.K. Narayan weaves his stories. He just portrays characters who are true to life, who are simple, naive, though they seem to be scheming sometimes, though they seem clever, but they are naive in the larger scheme of things. And when we look at Raman, and we feel that he's very unkind to this girl called Daisy, and he seems to have a very bad attitude when he wishes that Daisy was pregnant with his child, and that would be detrimental to her career as a family planning advocate. So we feel a sense of anger coming to us, and we seem to make a kind of judgment on Raman. But then it is interesting that this story has a background. It is a continuation of a novel. So this is a story, but it continues the story of a novel, The Painter of Signs. Okay, so Raman is the painter of signs, and in that novel, he meets Daisy when she wants him to make a signboard for her office. And when they start moving around Malkudi, they move around together because she wants him to see the strategic places uh, in Malgudi where they could set up those signposts, advocating birth control and showing slogans like "Hum do hamare do." So, you know, doing these things, they came closer, and then they also shared, you know, a, an intimate relationship more than once. And then on the day when they were going to be married, just before that day, on the eve of their day of marriage, Daisy decides that she would rather have her autonomy, her freedom, than be married to this guy and forego her independence. So then she just decides to go away to another place, uh, taking her task of advocating family planning. And that was how they didn't marry, or the marriage didn't happen. And if we know this novel, then we would also understand that the aunt who was living with Raman chose to go to Banaras and not live with him anymore because she disapproved of Daisy. So here we see that Raman is in a kind of in between space. In between space, because on one side there is this distaste in him for the ancient art of astrology. He does not believe in astrologers predicting that a particular signboard put up at a particular moment of time will only lead a particular individual to a great career. So he actually wants to warn people, don't believe in such things, believe in science and have a scientific attitude. So on one side there is this longing to go by reason, and on the other side there is this inability to understand Daisy and her need for freedom, which we see as a sign of uh, modernity. And somewhere in between is Raman. And in that particular story, we see that he longs for the company of the child, but at the same time does not know how successful he would be as a father. And he assumes a lot of things, that the child would be an orphan, and the parents of the child, if they were there, they would never come in search of him, and the child would want to forsake his parents and come and live with him. So he makes a lot of assumptions just because he does not want to be alone. So in that story, we see so many shades. We also wonder how come the child's parents, they just wait in that particular spot, near the mm, the small shops of the expo. And perhaps they were not able to find their child, but they could have heard the announcement when the officer was announcing that this child has lost his parents and wants to be reunited. That's also a question. Why didn't they respond to that call, and why they were just passively sitting down in a corner? Only when the child spotted them over the crowd, he ran towards them, leaving behind Raman. So there is a kind of uh, dialogue going on between the reader and the story, just because R.K. Narayan refrains from making any kind of moral judgment on any character. And if there is humor, I feel there is humor in both the stories. But in The Hungry Child, uh, we see that there is humor when the child goes around doing all sorts of mischiefs. So in a way, Raman enjoys those mischiefs. But then we also see that in any R.K. Narayan story, if there are comic scenes, the comedy is not loud or boisterous, but the comedy would be accompanied by some kind of sadness or some kind of uh, some kind of a heavy feeling. And here we see that the way Raman enjoys the actions of the child, also carries with it his anxieties of whether he would be able to bring up the child in a good way alone without the support of even his aunt, who was now no more living with him, and in the absence of a mother figure in the form of Daisy. So he had all these anxieties, and also his sadness at the end of the story when he sees the boy being united with his parents and he has nothing to do except return to his lonely place near Sarayu. So that is a kind of story which makes you think at different levels. And also the story which Pallavi read out, Lolly wrote. Even there we see that the municipal chairman, though his station is different from the station of Raman in this particular story, but their dilemma is of a similar kind, I feel. That even the municipal commissioner, the chairman, sorry, the municipal chairman occupies an in-between space. How? From the point where streets were being given Indian names to the point where a street with an Indian name like Kabir Lane was given the name Lolly Road. So the space between those 2 points in the story shows us the dilemmas of the municipal chairman and also the dilemmas of the character, the main character, the news reporter, who takes up the task of dismantling the statue of Sir Frederick Lawley and taking away or transporting, moving the statue from that place to his own house. And that ultimately how he manages to get his house converted into a kind of a place which would house another milestone, because afterwards in the story it was discovered rather suddenly that this was not the same Sir Frederick Lawley who terrorized Indians with his tyranny, but it was another Frederick Lawley who had actually established the town of Malgudi, and even he had lost his life trying to save the lives of the villagers during a flood. So all these situations that R.K. Narayan creates, it creates a certain kind of dialogue between the setting, the physical setting, and the people in the story. The physical setting is not an inert setting. Of course, the physical setting has a lot to do with whatever happens in the story. But we see that when characters are going through a crisis, or when there is something insurmountable in the lives of these people in the story, the setting does not participate in the action. And that is also an important point, that the Sarayu would be flowing, whether Raman, is happy in his life or not. The Sarayu would be flowing, and the market road would be busy, whether Raman got to have a son or not in the form of that child in that story. And the people in Lolly extension would go about their lives, trying to figure out things, whether, Kabir Lane was Kabir Lane, or now it has become Lolly Route. Or, Lolly extension was no more Lolly extension, but it was given another Indian name. So, all these things would be happening. The setting, though it is important, still, we don't see a direct involvement of the setting in the developments of the story. And I feel, this is kind of connected to uh, the way Thomas Hardy describes the setting in his novels. Though, even his description is a little different, because there the settings seem antagonistic to the fate of the characters. The settings seem to be working in such a way that the characters have to face some kind of tragedy. But here it is different. In that way, it is different. That the settings, they don't uh, have that kind of a very beneficial action, or a negative action on the lives of these individuals, but they do have a role to play. And uh, I think uh, these are some of the points which I wanted to bring out. And before I end, I would also like to talk about the Malgudi Museum. Actually, it is very interesting that a particular railway station has been converted into the Malgudi Museum. And this museum was conceptualized and executed in 2019-2020. And the railway station Arasalu in Karnataka is the place where most of the series was shot. The TV series, I'm talking about the TV series, the Malgudi Days, which came out in 1980s. So this is the railway station which proved as the place of shooting the episodes. And the fictional town is actually Akumbe, it's in the Shimoga district of Karnataka. And that converting that railway station into a museum is a very interesting thing to do, because if you go there, you will see the walls being decorated with paintings from the scenes in R.K. Narayan stories, and it is interesting to see those paintings. And there is also a kind of abandoned train bogie, which has Malgudi chai written on it. So it is a kind of cafe. And the whole railway station is out of use, it is not being used, and that was how this place could be converted into a museum. So it is interesting that it's also about how this creator of Malgudi also continues to make Malgudi a place for tourists, because now you can actually go and see the railway station, and if you look at the paintings on the walls, you will feel as if you are inside those stories. So it is a really good step. And I think I have just shared with you whatever I had in mind about Malgudi Days. Now it is up to you to pick up that book and lose yourself in the world of the stories. And meanwhile, Pallavi has joined us, and now I would like to request Pallavi to say something, since this is our last session on R.K. Narayan. Yes, Pallavi, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, actually, I won't be speaking much today. I'm not at my place. So that's why I joined late. And also, whatever I had written about all these readings, that material is not with me. But yeah, I would say that after a long time, I have read something, and and the readings of the stories the last time we did, it gave me another kind of feeling, because reading is somewhere lost nowadays. This kind of reading, we are more into interpretation with changing times, and uh, it was pleasurable to read those stories. And I would request our viewers to pick these stories, because the stories are very much the kaleidoscopic and the montage view of a place where the um, where a geographical space, we feel like it is playing a character. As you were talking about that the setting doesn't intervene much into the stories, an idea was coming into my mind, and I was thinking that uh, it's like we Eastern people have these thoughts with us from our scriptures and all our religious readings, that uh, each person um, each person considers and work in his or her own universe, and those things become uh, apparent and center of focus for him or her. And the setting around it affects us. It gives us so much, it takes from us so much, but it keeps on going. Our life keeps going on other side, and the setting around is also keeps moving on in its own way, affecting us in different manners. So that is very interesting, that sometimes we get lost in our own head, and in the mind, in the world of our minds, that we we don't perceive what is happening around. But sometimes I would say that these things, that things happening around, if we look into these things the way RK Narayan did, so intimately and so precisely he is describing all the things. I am amazed that how his mind would have worked to notice all these nuances, and how he created this imaginary world, that when we read it, we get to know the nuances, and we also start noticing things around our own selves. We also the colors, the light, and the description of faces. And in the very first story, how he describes that man with the vermilion on his head and the turban. And literally, when he was describing, the picture was a picture was started forming in my head. I started imagining the person. So it is very interesting that these short stories are kind of pictures, snapshots that you see, and then you enter into another imaginary world. And it is beautiful. I would say that reading stories is pleasurable, and um, it also helps us to see your world in a different manner. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say today. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for all you just said. I was listening and I was enjoying whatever you said, and about the museum. I'm also curious that I wish that someday I could visit the museum and see all these things.
Yes, Pallavi, even I wish to do that now that I know a particular railway station has been converted into the Malgudi Museum. And you are right, An Astrologer's Day is a very chilling story, and the way the story is written, you feel that you feel the tension which is felt by the astrologer, and the way R.K. Narayan narrates the story, actually, it has a very different effect. You're right. It's a very engaging story, an astrologer's day, and in the right way to begin the collection of stories as well. And it is also interesting that R.K. Narayan says, stories need to be short, and he's very particular about it. If you want to write a good story, make it short, and within that short passage of time, the time when the story begins and the time when the story ends, it should have a lot of shades. It should say so much more, but the story should be short. And I feel that's why his stories are so interesting, because he manages to say so much within a few pages of one particular story. So thank you, Pallavi. Though you are in a different place, still you joined, and I thought I would be the only one today, but you joined, and we are two again. So we wind up this discussion on R.K. Narayan, and we wish that our viewers, they do go and read not only Malgudi Days but also the other novels which we have been talking about, other novels of R.K. Narayan. And we also wish that our viewers would put in some suggestions for uh, other Indian English works that we could take up in the subsequent sessions of the Malgudi group. So thank you, Pallavi, and I would thank all our viewers for being with us today. Thank you. Good night.